TriMet Board of Directors meeting. I'm going to start the meeting with our public forum, and this is an opportunity for people to address the board on matters that are before the board or of concern. For anybody watching at home, this is a forum that we provide where people can come in and sign up 30 minutes prior to the meeting, and we take people in the order of the sign up. We continue this for 45 minutes, and then we will go into our regular business meeting. The individual's comments are limited to 2 or 3 minutes. On this case, we only have 6 people that are ready that want to sign up and speak under the public forum, so we'll limit 3 minutes here this morning. For those also in the audience, I want to make sure you understand there are 2 ordinances before us today, and we will have public hearings on those. But I understand there are at least 3 people who would like to testify under the public forum, probably because of time, on those ordinances this morning, and that's perfectly acceptable. So with that, I'm going to call you up 2 at a time for the public forum. I have Lisa Huffman and William Hessner. Is that what it is?
Snell.
What is it again?
Snell, S-N-E-L-L.
Oh, Snell. Okay, well, please come on up. I bet you must be Lisa. We know you. Thank you. Good morning. So Lisa, the floor is yours.
Okay, hi, my name's Lisa Huffman. I'm a Lyft bus driver in Multnomah County. And today I just want to talk about the fare boxes and the Lyft buses. There are 3 yards, the Clackamas County, Washington County, and Multnomah County. And the problem is 2 of our yards, the Clackamas County and the Multnomah County, the contractor is requiring that the driver insert the fare boxes, the vaults into the fare boxes, and then also drop them as part of our job duties. So I started in 1992, and we've had several contractors, and the first 4, I believe, they did this. Sometimes they did it daily, and sometimes they did it every week, but they did it. And this last contractor is requiring that we do it. Now, they handle it on the Washington County yard. They have a fare box person. But I'm not understanding why the vaults are a bus driver's duty. And the management team in place on the Clackamas County yard is extremely reasonable, and they allow those drivers extra time. Before the last couple months, the Multnomah County management team was extremely reasonable. It's just the last couple of months we have a new management team in place, and they are extremely hostile. There's no other way to say it. And so now we're trying to put fare boxes and do our DOT pre-trip and walk and do all these things all in 15 minutes. We used to be able to use our vehicles and walk and carry the fare boxes as we saw fit and use our own discernment, because the yard is quite large. And the Multnomah County yard is the only yard where we share parking spaces with TriMet vehicles, whether they be our vans or our buses. We have to move those vehicles out of the way before we can park. And so the new management team saying, well, you have to do the fare boxes and all in this time. And this may seem like maybe a small thing for me to come to the board with, but this has really impacted the drivers across the board that are having to do it. And I don't understand why TriMet can't enforce the contractor actually handle the vaults and the fare boxes. It doesn't seem like it should be a driver job description. It's not in the labor contract, and it's not in a driver description. So why are we having to do that? It seems like that's money, it's fares, all the other yards do it. TriMet, you have an attendant that drops and inserts fare boxes. These are old too. They're from the fixed route buses from the 70s. These are really old. They're made out of nickel. They don't work right. And we really have basically one chance to get it inserted correctly. If we don't, then we're going to be leaving the yard late. We're already leaving late because there's this extra job duty. So I'm just asking you to look into this issue. Why are the 2 yards having to still do this? And like I say, the Clackamas yard has the amount of time they need. We do not. And so I just think that this should be a contractor should have to do this, not the drivers.
Okay, Lisa, I don't know the board can help you specifically on that, but I'm gonna ask staff to maybe do a little research and see what we can do to understand and help out there, but, appreciate your concern and
Yeah.
also,
Thank
you coming in today and
Yeah,
bringing it
thank
to our
you, Neil.
attention.
Okay. thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Lisa. William?
So, I'd like to bring up a rule that will directly affect e-fare system in 2017. These affect people with disabilities that are receiving provider brokerage support services. These often include nationalized support services for transportation of the fixed route system and the paratransit system. The rule under guidelines for the will go in of the support services can and cannot do under administration rules ORS 411340170. Standards for providers organizations pay with support services fund to a BII-1 staff borrowing or loaning for money. This affects the after the they can go and buy the e-fare card, but they cannot go and reload the money onto the card because it counts as a loan under their eyes. I am asking you to go and please amend this to go and allow the continuation of analog passes. Because if it doesn't happen under my eyes, it would be a violation of the American with Disabilities Act.
Thank you. I'm not sure I fully understand your issue. Maybe staff can help. I know that we have the e-fare experts here, at least they were in with us earlier today. I don't know that we're making changes right now that would change things with the work we're planning underway, but we certainly don't want to make it harder for somebody to be able to load money onto a card to be able to use it. And right now, we don't have that capability yet in our system. So, Mr. General Manager, do you have any comments? Or
I see Mr. Tom Strader in the back, and perhaps he could connect with Mr. Snell, and we get a little bit more details about the concern and make sure that we have it addressed.
Yeah. Thank you. So did I have your concern correctly?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Snell. I appreciate you coming today. We'll see if we can get you helped out here. All right, the next two are David Sale and then Margaret Clark.
Ladies first, Margaret.
Oh, how gallant. My name's Margaret Clark. I'm the mother of deceased city planner Graham Clark. I serve on the Traffic Safety Committee and I'm involved with Ride Connection. I arrived in Portland in 1959 from Portland and the UK's fine transit system. There were only blue buses and they were very sparse. I moved to American Plaza in 1992 and used the MAX at its inception, streetcar, and the Fairless Square. Graham worked on the Sandy Project and the North-South Line and was an ardent bicycle activist and referred to the transit with Gil Kelly's phrase, a moving sidewalk, which is the way I use it. I get on the bus and off the bus and on the MAX and on the streetcar, and I can go anywhere in the city. I now live in Terwilliger Plaza, where transit is a marketing tool. As with Holiday Park and Mirabella, the residents retain a modicum of independence from the number 8 bus, which has wonderful service, goes to Holiday Park and to Terwilliger. And Mirabella has the streetcar. Of all of these people, of course, can afford the increase in the fare, and I hope to maintain the level of service. I trust the legislature will follow the governor's request by passing the transit bill, and as the fare increase is a burden to many, I hope that you will revisit the subject after the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Very thoughtful comments, and thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
Long time support.
Yes, thank you very much. David, nice to see you again this morning.
Good to see you guys. Good morning, board. Well, happy 5th anniversary of TriMet killing my daughter. It's in the next couple days, so say a few prayers for my family. After 5 years of evaluating what's happened and the changes that have been made are very insubstantial with the problems that you guys have. I talked to Neil after our settlement conference, and he said that we could contact Harry Support at my discretion, and I still haven't been able to contact him and get any kind of feedback from him. He approached me this morning at the meeting, so don't chew him out now. We're gonna talk this next week,
Good.
I'm sure.
Good.
So, the problems remain the same. The smoke screens remain the same. Safety is not your priority. You guys know that. The mirrors are still an issue. And then when the new buses come out, we blow a smoke screen and say we moved the little mirrors and got those out of the driver's face. Well, it's all fine and dandy, the mirrors are still there. If you look across the board in the industry, Gillig will not manufacture a bus without a European-style mirror unless requested. New Flyer will not manufacture a bus without a European mirror unless requested because of these incidents. When we were in the investigation of these mirrors, New Flyer had a stack and a file in their office of the engineers. It was huge, of fatalities, pedestrian crashes, and all these, whatever terminology we want to use for it. If you go to Philadelphia, that I've advocated with the Transit Workers Union 234, for them to move, for SEPTA to move those mirrors, not only do they disrespect it, and it's become such a commonality to hit a pedestrian, they call them knockdowns. And I hope that we don't become that way. We cannot continue to do business this way because of the facts, the history of people getting hurt. The last gentleman that I recall, the pedestrian being hit, he fell underneath the wheels, fell underneath the bus, and he had died from that crash. If the driver had a camera on each side of his bus and a monitor to see those cameras, he would have never moved that bus. I own a double-decker bus now. It's been in my family for 15 years. And due to we opened a foundation in my daughter's name to fund funerals for people in Clark County that cannot afford to bury their children. We were fortunate enough to be able to afford that. But there are a lot of families that can't if their children die. So we have turned this double-decker bus into a food cart to fund that foundation. I put cameras on both sides of the bus and in the rear. If I move that bus, I look at that camera and I can see exactly what's happening around me. I won't move it if there's a problem. That system cost me $400. Now, if you take the $2 million that TriMet paid out to the families of that crash, I think there's something in the budget there for that. So, the new technologies that are out there that will hopefully stop the bus before a pedestrian collision happens, hopefully that'll deter a lot of this. So, aggressively chase that, because if the driver won't stop it, the bus needs to. If the driver can't stop the bus needs to stop itself. And the technology's there.
Good.
Please do a better job. Don't ignore it. I can't. These people can't. And no one else should have to do that.
Right. David, thank you. We know this is a tough time for you and your family, and appreciate you coming in today. Hopefully things have gotten better. Again, this board I think when you and I have chatted, we are committed to safety, and we think we've been making some progress. I hope after you talk to Harry, maybe you can see some of the progress we're being made. Doesn't mean we've ever done enough. I want to stress that, and so we can do better, and we'll take a further look at your comments, because having a pedestrian be hit by a bus is not acceptable anywhere. And so appreciate your input and your willingness to keep engaged in this too. It's very heartening, and again, I would encourage you to keep on our case about safety, because we want to learn.
I appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
hearing me.
Thank you.
All right. The next two people I have are Justine Hernandez and Kaya Murphy. Wanted to speak on our ordinances, but wanted to be heard before the actual meeting. So good morning.
Morning.
Okay.
Okay.
Good
Hi,
morning. You are?
Kayla Murphy.
Kayla, okay. Good
I'm
morning.
here representing Human Solutions.
Okay.
Just obviously talking about the Honored Citizens Fare increase. And Human Solutions is working to end poverty and homelessness in Multnomah County. And through our work, we come into contact with over 75,000 people a year, and thousands of them fall under the Honored Citizen Fare category. And these are people who are living on very, very fixed incomes. So, a fare hike that might seem negligibly small to most people is huge to them. I mean, they're counting every single dollar. We often see them spending 100% of their income just on their rent. So that means that they're making a decision every day about what bills they can pay and what they're going to have to skip. And that means every day they face the risk of having water, heat, electricity, any of these things just cut off. So, obviously this fare hike is going to exacerbate that massively. And in addition to that, our family advocates see a lot of people with the Honored Citizen Pass are also disabled, and this means that they have a lot of doctor's appointments and mental health appointments, and this affordable rate at present allows them to ride transportation to all these appointments and not have to worry about it. But if we're going to increase this rate, then it just becomes another thing that they have to worry about, and it's just going to create another decision. Do I want to go to my doctor's appointment today, or do I want to pay for food? And that's just not something that they should have to worry about when they already have so much on their plate. So I think we need to stop increasing barriers for those who already have these challenges due to their age or low income or disabilities. And this fare hike would really create another huge barrier for them. So I hope that you'll reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anybody watching, we do have an ordinance that we're considering, which is just the first reading of the ordinance, which we will not take any action today, but we are seeking public input from folks like you. So we appreciate you coming forward and giving us your concerns. We've heard others,
Yeah.
and we know any hike is controversial. So thank you for coming. Good morning.
Buenos días.
Buenos dias.
Mi nombre es Justina Hernández.
Good morning, my name is Justin Hernandez.
Represento a Líderes Verdes.
I represent Verde Leaders.
Pido que no aumente los precios de los boletos y los pases de las personas ancianas de tercera edad.
I am requesting that you not increase the prices for the tickets and the passes for the elderly.
Aumentan los precios, va a afectar en una manera negativa
The increase of prices will affect people negatively.
a los que usan el servicio.
For those that use the service,
Efectivamente les afectará y ya no van a poder salir a hacer sus mandados.
in essence, it would affect them in their lives and not be able to basically carry out the things they need to do.
Les afectará físicamente y emocionalmente.
It would affect them also emotionally and physically.
Ellos tienen derecho de vivir
They also have the right to live.
y no le corten las alas, por favor.
Do
Hay
not,
que dejarlos vivir.
do not cut their wings. Please allow them to live.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Amigo.
And thank you, Martine. Appreciate your assistance. All right, well, I have one, no. That concludes the folks who wanted to speak at the public forum. I'm sorry, did somebody not get signed up?
I did sign up. I did sign up for ordinance 338.
Right, and so are you Christopher West?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I understand you wanted to be heard when we were discussing the ordinance, which we'll be getting to in a moment. If you want to testify now, you're more than welcome to do that.
I'm welcome to do it right
Okay, all right, please do. And you must be Joanne? Okay. You'll wait? Okay, all right. Mr. West, please continue.
Good morning, Board of Directors. My name is Christopher West. I'm sorry to interrupt like that, but
That's all right, no, please.
I do want to speak about 338. I am in full support of the fare increase. I'm in the minority, probably. I'm not very popular about that right now, especially in Cedar Mill. But I am on fixed income. I make very little money, but yet a fare increase would not damage me badly. In fact, I am proposing to the Board of Directors and the Board of TriMet, crazy as it sounds, jam the rate to $30 a month for the Fair Honor Citizen Pass. We are not paying our fair share for TriMet. I asked this, and I also don't mind also if you can increase the frequency of Route 48 and 62. We are stranded in Cedar Mill right now. We're not getting enough service to Tannersbourne, to Washington Square Mall in that district. We're pretty much isolated out there in Cedar Mill. You did put 50 in, but 50 doesn't do me any good. 50 goes to Thompson. I don't live near Thompson. I live on the south end of the system. So if you can increase the fare to not only increase it to $30, make it fair for everybody to pay that fee, but then increase the service for Cedar Mill, I would be eternally grateful. I did talk at a board meeting 5 years ago. I've been a writer for 10 years. It's the only way we get around, my wife and I. And she's disabled. She can barely walk. So anyway, increase the fare to 30, increase 48 and 62. And I really thank you for taking my consideration because it would really help us out. And I talked in a meeting, we've been writers for 10 years. We've been writing the system ever since we came to Portland.
Great.
So please increase the rate to 30, increase 48 and 62. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, appreciate it. So again, did you want to speak now? It's up to you. If you have to leave, please come on up, but you'll have the context, but go on up. You have to identify yourself, so I know.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Amy Anderson, and I am a member of about 10 committees in this community. I co-chair several that have to do with mental health and addictions. I'm on the Transportation PAC Committee. I'm on Health Shares Advisory Committee. I'm on just about every committee there is in Portland in order to look into how to better access our services, health, transportation, and housing. And right now, I got to tell you, the increase in fare would affect 335,000 Medicaid patients, which currently use the system of healthcare in our community. And the state barely reimburses for the minimum. There is no profit to gain from the state. So whatever fares are increased will be a significant burden on those agencies trying to provide transportation to the medically fragile people. The other fact is housing. Housing has tripled in most areas. Your average rent now is $700 and $900 to $1,500 a month. You add that with an increased transportation cost, and you are just putting people out. The other issue I deal with is I am disabled. I rely on transportation, and my bus pass is provided for by the Senior and Disabled Service Office, because that's the only way I can get around and do my business. So the folks that are providing services to the seniors in this community, like myself, would also be impacted, because that would reduce the overall number of clients they could serve given the cost of bus passes. So when you guys start thinking about increasing 25 cents on the street level, think about it in the multiplication of 500,000 people or more would be suffering in other areas that you haven't even researched yet. All the groups that provide transportation for the senior and the disabled and the Medicaid, that cost would be in the millions when you start looking at numbers that are over 500,000. And that's about what our tri-county area is required to provide as transportation to everybody on Medicaid. So that is really a huge factor when you're doing your multiplication tables. So if you can think about this in a much bigger picture and look at all the people that are affected in our community overall, I know this isn't a topic, but I just have to say it right now, is the electronic fare system is not going to function for people who are severely disabled and severely handicapped, and you have to remember all these things. So keep that in mind when you're looking at upgrading your systems, is the amount of people that are now being put back on TriMet from the non-emergency medical from taxi service has doubled, because the new company wants everybody riding the bus. So if they want everybody riding the bus to and from their appointments, then they're going to have to pay for bus passes. And if you increase the ride of bus passes, then that might reduce the amount of care that people get to and from their medical appointments. So thank you for your time, and please consider all the aspects of all the people in our community that are being served by TriMet. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming. All right, so now I'm going to conclude the public forum. I will point out I have 5 other people who've signed up who want to testify on our ordinances today, which I will not forget when we get to the ordinances. Okay, so our public forum is now closed. What I'm going to do is call to order the regular business meeting of the Tri-County Transportation District of Oregon's Board of Directors meeting for April 22nd, 2015. So let's start with the board reports. Dr. Bethel, do you have a report on the Committee on Accessible Transportation this morning?
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President. Actually, CAT did not meet last month.
Okay.
We're in our bi-monthly schedules, and during the off months when we do not meet, they take the opportunity to do some tours or visit some sites. Do expect we will have our meeting coming up in May. Do want to put in a plug and invitation. Annual meeting will be in June, luncheon. Hope some of you as board members will be able to attend as well.
Good.
That's it for CAT for this
All
month.
right, I think that's easy. Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to move on to the Transit Equity Advisory Committee. However, Consuelo Zaragoza, our director who's in charge of the board liaison to that committee, is not here this morning. So does staff have anything they want to add this morning on from the TAC committee?
I'm going to look at Jake Ward to see if there's anything you think the board needs to know as a general rule.
We're talking a lot about e-fare.
Okay, all right, that's a good report. We'll wait for Consuelo to come back and get a full report. So let's have a report then on the Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee, as we call MPAC. Director Prosser.
Yeah, we met 2 weeks ago. The urban growth management decision is coming up. There's a preliminary memo out on that. And so MPAC is at the point of going through, looking at various issues that will impact that ultimate decision. And at our last meeting, we had a presentation from the City of Portland on their comprehensive plan update. You know, under the current urban growth management memo direction they're going, Portland would be asked to absorb a significant portion of the growth that is coming to this region. And so in talking about the changes of the comprehensive plan, they're feeling if those changes go through, they'd be in a good shape to absorb that level of growth. Obviously, that will trickle down and impact us in terms of level of service and where the growth is, that type of thing. So we continue to watch it.
And thank you for attending those meetings. It's greatly appreciated. Mean that sincerely. All right, any questions for Director Prosser? All right, well, let's move on to the General Manager report. Mr. McFarland?
Good morning, Board President Warner, members of the board. I did want to just note, and Mr. Sale brought this up, is that we are approaching the 5-year anniversary of what I would call the worst incident in TriMet's history, pedestrian accident in Old Town that you're all very aware of. I would just remind the board that I think as a result of that tragic incident, we actually are a safer TriMet. We have obviously a long road still to go, but we've covered a lot of ground in that interim period. You might recall we started off by pulling together a task force of safety officials as well as others to actually help take an outside look at TriMet safety practices. And out of that came a number of recommendations which have been implemented. That included raising the profile of our safety officer to an executive level and reporting directly to the general manager. We retooled what we call our request for safety assessment, which is our tool for our frontline employees to actually raise a safety issue, and we've guaranteed response to that as immediately as we can. Again, sometimes those issues that are raised are about a city street condition or visibility that sometimes we don't have control over, but then we do take those up with the appropriate road jurisdictions related to the bus system. You might recall that with the board support, we also began or reestablished annual recertification of all of our operators. So all of our operators do go through annual training focused on safety, focused on better results from a safety standpoint. We've also begun to implement, and this is the next generation of safety improvement, or a safety management system. And we are beginning the training efforts. So the executive team and many of the directors levels have gone through the training for the safety management system. Ultimately, everyone in the agency will be going through that training. Safety management systems are the style of safety regimen that you see, for example, in airlines related, which have had a remarkable safety record when you think about it overall. We're also continuing our investigation of technology. We've had a peer review on the topic of the mirrors. We've also are now underway and finalizing, and we have coming to you before too long a report on pedestrian warning systems that we've been testing as a result of a grant we applied for and received from the Federal Transit Administration. So to reiterate Board President Warner's comment, this can never be done. This needs to be our continued emphasis and priority. And again, as I've stated, it's a value. It's something that has to infuse everything that we do as a TriMet employee in every role. And that will be a journey, but it's a journey we've started and continue, I think, to make good progress on. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions the board had on that. Otherwise, I'll move on to some other topics. I did also just want to comment, Mr. West raised issues with service related to lines 48 and 62. I would note that both those lines are targeted in our West Side Service Enhancement Plan for improved service. Indeed, the line 48 did receive an upgrade of service, I believe it was a couple of years ago now, or a year ago last September. And so we do hope that the frequency and quality of those lines will improve over time. But that will obviously rely to some extent on budget and capability over a period of time. But I would note that we've heard that loud and clear, and those lines are reflected in our service enhancement plans for that for the Cedar Mill area. Moving on, I just wanted to note that March ridership was up again on the monthly level about 3%. We saw increases in both MAX and bus, and we saw some pretty good increases again on the weekend, which again reflects some of the restoration of bus frequent service on Saturdays, I believe. West numbers again are down, as you've seen in past months, so that's a trend, not a new trend. But again, I think what we're seeing is a continued increase, even though we have this competition from lower gas prices at the same time. So I think the improvement of service that we've been emphasizing, particularly on the bus side, has really begun to pay dividends in terms of additional ridership. So we're pleased to see that. I also wanted to note that in front of you is an electronic fare report. The board asked for regular updates and reports on the electronic fare system development. And over the last 2 months, we've continued to make some very good progress. One of the things that you'll note is, and it is the visible part of the electronic fare system, is some of the work on the platforms. That work is underway, and we've been able to do most of that work without closing platforms, been able to segment off the areas where we needed to trench in order to extend conduits and build a foundation for the ultimate readers. But we do have 2 platforms coming up that are frankly just too tight and too crowded as a regular basis for that work to continue safely while serving passengers, and that would be the Pioneer Square stations. So we want to just note that they will be closed from April 27th through May 3rd. And again, there are stations 2 blocks either directions of that station, so we hope that our customers won't find that too terrible of an inconvenience, but it's just a short-term closure as we complete the installation of the work for electronic fare. Regarding other fronts, the back-end development and tech applications, that work also continues, and it continues on time and on budget. So again, so far so good, but we have a lot of work to do. We really are in the tail end of the final design phase and really just beginning to ramp up to the stage where the coders go to work on the system. So again, lots of opportunity for testing and piloting before we actually roll this out more generally in 2017. But again, I think generally project is on time, on budget, with the exception of some of the civil work that we've talked to you about previously related to contract actions. So I know there are others here if there are questions about that. I did want to move on also to just note that we have a new publication. It's a series of publications we'll be doing related to the Orange Line opening. But I wanted to start the introduction of this by wishing everybody a happy Earth Day. But this report is particularly about making the Orange Line green. It's about the sustainability efforts that went into the construction of the Orange Line. And we're very proud of those efforts because this is really marks in terms of the development of this, a point where we really focused on sustainability efforts at the very outset of the design effort. So, for example, there are 286 bioswales that have the opportunity to capture an estimated 1.8 million square feet of runoff. There's mitigation for shallow water habitat for migrating salmon. There's restoration of creeks in both Portland and Milwaukee related to our native fish habitat. There's pilot initiatives like our solar energy shelters and the eco-track along Lincoln Avenue. And needless to say, we've also included in the project more than $65 million in people-powered transportation, active transportation that make the system more accessible for cyclists and pedestrians. So all of that's documented in the brochure that's in front of you. Much more, of course, than what I've mentioned. But again, I think it begins to mark how TriMet is joining the force of really trying to do our construction in a very sustainable manner and develop our system in that way as well. Next up, I'd like to introduce Dee Brookshire to do a quarterly finance report. Dee?
Good morning, Chair Warner and members of the board. This report brings you the third quarter fiscal results through March 31st of 2015. With 3 quarters of the year behind us, we can pretty much see where we're going to end up at year end. Overall, the news is good from a budget to actual standpoint. This report will be brief and hit the high points of the reports you received. So starting with revenues, we see that revenues are lagging by 1.8% or $6.1 million at the 9-month point. Part of this is due to passenger revenue being under budget by 1.1%, while ridership is up, as General Manager McFarland noted, almost 3%. The drop in passenger revenue amounts to about $900,000, but on the plus side, we are seeing an increase in payroll tax revenue over budget during the same period. At 0.7% or $1.4 million, total payroll tax revenue to date, though, is 4% over the same time frame last year. But recall, this, we did have the last increment of the last increase in January of last year. So the effect of several revenue accounts fluctuating up and down against budget make up the balance of the variance. Are there any questions on revenues? Moving on to expenditures, total expenses are under budget by 8.7% or $29.5 million at the 9-month point. So operating expenditures continue the under budget position we've seen all year at 6.7% or $22.2 million through the first 9 months. 19.1 million of this is in the operations division. The drivers of the variance are the elimination of the medical transportation service at mid-year and also the lower than budgeted price of fuel. There are a variety of other smaller line items that add to this variance. So in addition to the positive operating variance, several projects classified as operating projects are also under budget. At 9 months of the year, these total $7.3 million, which represents 70.2% under the budget for these projects. Some of this is due to timing and will be spent down by year end, but the majority of it will be carried over, and we have those requests in place to carry the funds over. A number of the funds or a significant percentage of the funds are grant funds, so we can't use them for operations or for any other purpose except these projects. Are there any questions on expenditures?
I have a question. One of the speakers made a comment about the medical transportation costs, and I don't want to, you don't try to answer this now, but I guess I'm just wondering if we're seeing trends in terms of the costs, and because I think we were worried about the new contractor, again, pushing more costs back to TriMet. And so I'm not expecting an answer now unless you have some information readily available on that.
It is an area we're watching very closely, but I would also note that that's one of the big changes in expenditures and frankly, well, ultimately revenues, is that medical transportation program came out of our budget as
Exactly.
of December, the end of December of this year.
Right. Any other questions on expenditures? Okay, so the overall positive net operational result is $23.4 million. You have reports on debt service, capital projects, and investments, which I will not go over in detail, but we'll be happy to answer any questions now or later if you have any. And this concludes my report.
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
So next up, I'd like to ask our Director of Safety and Security, Harry Saporta, and Commander Leloff from the Transit Police Division to come forward to give you a little update on where we are on security issues and security statistics. So, gentlemen.
Good morning, President Warner and board members. This morning, we'd like to provide you with an overview of the crime trends that occurred over the 2014. And this chart illustrates the trending for bus and rail. And you'll note that on the bus side, we had a pretty marked decrease between 2012 and 2013. And that downtrend continued relatively flat, though, between 2013 and 2014. We did see, however, an increase of about 12% on the rail side between 2013 and 2014, but yet overall there is still a significant decrease. The graph to the right shows that that downward trend actually continued for the first half of 2014, but then we saw an increase. And I'll speak to that in just a little bit. And where we saw increases principally were in the areas of thefts and crimes against customers' automobiles. So this provides an overview of the rate per 100,000 boardings. And there we did see, as I said earlier, there is about a 12% increase. And on the bus side, we continued to see a downward trend of about 8%. But I want to put this in a little bit of perspective. And when you look at providing 100 million rides annually, what does that really mean? It means approximately 1 in about 173,000 trips there was a report of crime. If you look at the customer reported crimes, these are things that directly affect them. It was a rate of 1 in 231,000 trips. So, although we did see this increase in rail, it's not an enormous increase. It's slight. We're talking about a magnitude of about 52 additional crimes over that annual period. Looking at the specific crimes themselves and looking at customer vehicles and when they park in park-and-rides, in 2014 it rose by about 53. And in looking at this, you'll also note that the increase was principally in the areas of theft from, and this is an area where customers really do play a large role by keeping their items out of sight and locked in their trunk, or simply not having them in their automobile. And I will talk about how we're addressing thefts of automobiles themselves as well in just a little bit in the presentation. We also looked at increase in thefts in 2014. This was about 57, again, putting it a little bit into perspective. So it rose from 218 to 275. But in looking at those a little bit more closely, we also noted that roughly 50% of those were items that were left behind or lost on the bus and were not returned. So this provides just a brief overview of where the crimes are occurring within the TriMet system, principally the rail system. And you'll note that Gresham and Eastside is the area where we continue to provide focus, as well as the downtown and Lloyd areas. And that's not to say we're ignoring all the other areas, but we tend to place a little bit more emphasis in those particular areas. So obviously the next question is, what are we doing to counter the trending that we're seeing? And we're doing several things. And one of the items that we see that I repeat in just about every time that I provide an overview in the crime rates is that presence on the system is absolutely key. And with the new budget, I was pleased to be informed that we are going to be adding 5 additional police officers. The Orange Line is expanding the rail network, and we have to be able to respond to the needs that might occur along the Orange Line. In addition to that, we are adding 4 security officers to patrol the Orange Line as well. So this is an addition to the police officers that you see. And we're also currently adding patrols to park-and-rides. And this is in the East County area. We also saw an increase in auto-related crimes in the Hillsborough area. So we've been adding patrols to the park-and-rides in those geographical areas. In addition, we continue to use our field supervisors to provide that presence on the system. So one of the other strategies is something called Region, and I'm going to have Commander Leloff speak to that, as well as the addition of a crime analyst.
Good morning, thank you. The Region project has been about a 3-4 year project for the Portland Police Bureau. It links 44 agencies into one database. It's the only database of its kind in the nation. It went live April 15th. And a couple little glitches on April 15th and 16th, but all is well. So a Beaverton officer will now be able to go into the system, pull up a report, and actually pull up a Portland police report right into the system. So we're sharing more data, intelligence-driven, and linked in many ways, which is saving staffing hours, right? So, and then we are adding a crime analyst for the first time within the transit policing division itself. It will be dedicated to TriMet. And we're really going to hone our skills in data-led policing, intel-led policing, and predictive policing. So as you imagine, the 3 counties and 60 miles of track and bus stops and the complexities of TriMet and the low level of crime, we want to hone our skill sets and deploy in those very specific places with the assets in which there's 68 sworn now. So we're pleased we offered a job to a young man coming straight out of college, and he's in the background phase. So he will be dedicated to TriMet and transit policing. And so we're going to get out on the cutting edge of predicting where the crime is going to occur and get out ahead of it and actually prevent crime. And then really honing where we put our resources and actually examining how we're doing our resources now.
Yes.
One of the things, Commander Leloff, you are aware of is that the community, particularly people of color, are very, very much concerned about when you collect your data, that you're collecting complete data and data that does not have left open blanks that officers do not fill in. So with this new system, bringing on new officers, G4S, which is a whole nother concern about G4S, or is the Bureau with Transit Police, are you going to document all contacts? And I mean every contact that an officer has with a citizen is going to be documented, placed into this data analysis with complete information, ethnicity, and everything. Otherwise, this is an investment of dollars that is not going to address the problems that we have. And so I need to hear that being done on the part of transit with the Bureau, and if not, it affects how I will feel about funding through TriMet's budget to get this done.
All right, so documenting every contact. So one of the things that I've been doing is I've been writing with the officers and seeing how they're doing their work in a day-to-day operation and in an equity lens. And one of the things the officers deploy at is a large enough where they check everybody. They go right down the line and they check everybody. And so they're making very conscious decisions about how they deploy on the system. And they're behavior driven. So the other day, for an example, they got on and here is 2 people, half case of beer bottle spilled over, and they're sitting in the aisleway, and they obviously had a few to drink, right? So they're behavior driven, but they're also thinking about the national conversation in equity. And so Sergeant Ingen took me on my first ride about probably 1st of February, and he walked me through how the officers are deploying. It doesn't answer your question. So how do we make a contact and document every single contact? Because you hop onto a train and there's 60 people and we go from one end to the other. And then if you're law abiding, I'm sure you don't want to be in our system and you don't want to be documented into that system. Now on a traffic stops data, we have a legal reason, but on the other time when we're walking down the aisleway and you've got a legal ticket, there's no reason to document that. So I hear you. I'm trying to figure out how to do that because you're going to use more resources as I go through this entire train that has 60 people. I come off the platform, I check people on the platform, I get onto the next train, and I have another 60. How do you, so it's something that I'm gonna have to sit and think about. And we've actually talked about it, but how do you document every contact when you're just going down the entire line?
Let me be a little bit more clear and specific what I mean about documenting every contact. I think when you're doing a fare check, going up and down the line on the bus or the train, I'm not talking about documenting that. I'm really talking about that when you write a ticket, you write an exclusion, you're doing those, that they are documented completely, that there are no left unchecked marks of saying, I don't know, I didn't observe it, but we've got a ticket. And so therefore, when you go back and do the analysis of the data, it'll tell you that you gave out 100 tickets. But then it tells you, you ask the question, what makes up the 100? And you say, we don't have such data. It's not there. We didn't collect it, or nobody checked it off. That can't continue if we're going to, particularly for as it goes for me, as part of TriMet, to put dollars into doing transit, policing. It has to start addressing the issues that we're facing with our citizens and the complaints that we're getting. One of the articles not too long ago talks about how much time is being used up in courts for the amount of tickets that's in, how many other counties are taking them in and getting rid of them because they're just completely just filling up. We want safety, but for me, in the economic climate that we're in, we can't continue to see with the right conscience that we can continue to do that and put all that extra cost on that way, and then try to use the justification that we need more G4Ss and we need to put 5 more folk on, and I understand we've got to have that for the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail Run. But somewhere, this thing has to balance out and start bringing about improvements to make sure that we are still focused on talking about safety and we're not putting in another system just to do something. I mean, I got an iPhone, and Apple can take half the stuff off that they put on the phone because I don't need it, I don't use it, it's not helping me do what I want to do, but I can't even take it off because they say that's a part of the program. And so I end up paying for stuff that I don't want, but I got to the other. So I don't want to pay for, and I'm not talking about myself personally, and then I am talking about myself personally because I got to pay taxes, that we aren't just doing that just to. So that's what I mean by, kind of documenting that.
Well, we are documenting all the exclusions and all the citations. The officers write very few citations, but this analytical piece of this is pulling all these databases. So there's a database, a fare evasion database, that I want to be able to look at that and examine that and see the problem areas and then go and address that problem so that we can reduce the crime and improve the safety. So bringing those databases, I can tell you that all the exclusions, they're gonna be in the system, absolutely. And so being able to link all this together and examine. Right now, I'm not able to look at these fare evasion reports with a very detailed eye, but this will be what the new person will do. But all the boxes will be checked, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like you're moving on to station design, security. But I have a question about the crime statistic reporting. And obviously, we are focusing on reported crimes because that's all we can really document. What's kind of the industry standard? There are a lot of crimes occur every day that are not reported. How, kind of gets to also our customer perception of safety, because if something happens to them and it's all like, that's just, okay, that's what happens on Max, it's not worth my time reporting, it creates that perception and the word of mouth. Is there any way to get a handle on what the total crime amount is, or get some sense of measurement? Is there much unreported crime on our system? I don't know if there's an answer, but I'm just kind of curious.
I don't know the specific answer to that, but one of the things that is done is a survey of the population to see what their perception is of safety on the bus system and the rail system. And we know that the perception is they feel safe, relatively safe. And I don't remember the specific numbers, but there was a recent survey and it was above 70%. So we use that as a barometer as well. So it's not just the crime trending, it's also the perception of safety. Perception of safety is enormous because we may have no crime at all, but if there's still a perception of the system being unsafe, riders will not use it. So we try to address that as well. One of the things that the feedback that we receive from customers is that they want to see the officers and the supervisors and the security officers on the trains and the buses. So that is why I emphasize that providing that presence is key. It's also key because it acts as a deterrent. And when someone sees an officer there, they are less likely to misbehave. Sometimes they do anyway, which is surprising. But I don't know how we can really measure that. I do know, I've heard the same, and I do believe that some crimes are underreported, that they see something and not necessarily say anything. What we encourage our ridership to do is if they see something, to say something, because we cannot even begin to address a particular problem unless we're aware of those problems. You know, the other piece that is also used is that customers call in and they report issues, and this is through our SIP program. We use that data as well. Bus operators also report if they believe there's fare evasion. So we look at that information and address those particular issues by redeploying the officers accordingly. So we're using a combination of tools. I believe that with the addition of the crime analyst, it will help us be much smarter about our deployments and actually assess whether or not it's working, and are we really addressing the problems that we're seeing and that are occurring. So,
as well as the
it's a tough one to answer.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and I think it mirrors the same thing all the agencies. We have some unreported crime, so we continue to have the educational pieces of that. We continue to have the dialogue. We need to know, but somebody loses a $300 bicycle, it's more trouble to report it than, so they just move on. But to know, so we try to do a lot of education on that piece.
So one of the things that, you know, it's not just presence on the system, but we're also using other tools. And one of the tools is to improve the lighting and sight lines on stations. And the little photograph just on the upper right-hand corner illustrates that. This happens to be a station on the Orange Line. What it also illustrates is the new type of light pole that we're using and luminaire. As I reported earlier in other presentations, that we began to do a series of lighting improvements along the Banfield stations, Gateway, and the East Multnomah County areas. That project has now been completed. So we have seen remarkable lighting improvement. What we're hoping is that also then begins to translate in reduction of crime. Because if you can be seen, you're less likely to commit a crime. We're also have been moving away from analog cameras more to digital cameras. These are state-of-the-art cameras. We're using video analytics to help us a little bit smarter because it's very difficult. This is software that actually looks at video for us, and by providing a set of rules, it will inform us of particular types of events such as intrusions. Where we're using this really are areas where we don't want pedestrians to be walking on the tracks, and it alerts us. So it's not only a security issue, it's a safety issue as well. We don't want to have collisions with pedestrians. And then also looking at clearly marking stations so that individuals know that if you walk beyond a particular point, we have signs, but we're also putting pavement markers, and that's what you see in the lower photograph where it says paid fare zone. So we're using a combination of things to help These are all considered to be crime prevention through environmental design concepts, and it helps deter crime as well. So, as Commander Leloff noted, educating the public is also one of the key initiatives, and we continue to provide outreach because we are seeing this increase in auto thefts and thefts from autos. We are going to be educating the public again. We try to do this annually. We're doing this on our webpage, and we're always looking at making improvements on the webpage so that we can provide as much information to public, because they are also key in helping provide protection. So in summary, I want to say that crime on the system does remain low. We look at all crimes. Assaults are going to be something that we really focus on because we don't want anyone to be harmed. Thefts from customers, there's a role that customer can play, but we need to educate them. There's a role that transit police and the supervisors and security officers play, and that's by providing presence so they act as a deterrent. Auto-related crimes, we're beginning to see, we are beginning to redeploy our security officers so that they are providing patrols in the park and rides. There are other tactics that we can use on the policing side, such as something known as bait cars. These are cars that you set up as a kind of a sting. And there's another concept called ghost cars. Those are all tools that we're using. We're increasing our patrols. Data analysis, data always drives the strategy, always. But by having a crime analyst, I think we're going to be a lot smarter about doing that. And now, if you have any other questions, I'd be pleased to answer those.
I don't see any other questions. I want to thank you both for coming. Obviously, the park and ride issues, the ones that I hear about occasionally, so I'm pleased to see that we're putting some additional priority there that, and I know that's one that you'll never be able to solve completely. Because
I do want to add one more thing, and I'll let Commander Leloff speak about that. But this afternoon, we have kind of a special ride that is going to take place with police chiefs and sheriffs.
So one of the things we're going to try to do 2 to 3 or 4 times a year is get the chiefs and sheriffs and agency heads out onto the system, familiarize themselves with the system and the critical work we do, and hopefully translate that back to the other agencies, their home agencies. So you know that you touch 20 law enforcement agencies in the 3 counties. 14 of them are involved in this task force. So trying to make sure that everybody is part of the safety and security of the system, because you have probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 cops in the region. 68 of them is what we have, right? So we're going to try to do this. We're going to try to do some other ways of surges onto the system. Doesn't cost you more money. It just brings more interest. So today you'll have every agency, 100% of the agencies responded with support. Not every agency department head can make it today, but most of them did. There's only, I think, 4 out of the 14 that couldn't because of budget or meetings or something. So it's another way to get more visible presence and to get buy-in from all the agencies. So today at 2 to 5, the chiefs and sheriffs will be out.
excellent, excellent. Thank you both again.
Thank you.
All right. Does that conclude the general manager's report?
It does, thank you, sir.
All right, well, all right. I'm seeing none, so let's move right on to the consent agenda then. For everybody's information, there are 4 items on our consent agenda, and items on a consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be approved by the board in a single motion. However, any board member may request an item from the consent agenda be removed for further discussion or questions, and if so, we can pull the action entirely and deal with it later on in the agenda or at a later date. So first off, I guess I would see, is there any items that the board would like to have removed from the consent agenda?
Resolution 150415.
Okay. What is a question, or you want to pull that?
There's just some questions that, when I read through this resolution and looked at the rankings, this is almost too good to be true.
Well, why don't we ask your question, see if we can clear it up, and we'll see if we can
Okay.
move it on here.
My questions go to the evaluations, particularly as it regards to Stephen Siegel. That's one of the questions. Just perfect all the way through, basically. And I just can't wrap my mind around a bidder being perfect on a work plan, perfect on price. And every one that he submitted, or she submitted, or this company submitted, they're right at the top. I mean, right across. There's not a point under. They're just right there. They're perfect. It's almost as if they wrote the work plan, put it in the RFP, and said, now I'll give you the same thing that I wrote. And I know that did not happen. But this needs, for me, has to be justified. How can we come out so perfectly with one person,
So,
one company?
if I might ask, I could have one of our staff people, probably, is it Alan? Would you be the best, or Dan? And I would just, as Alan is coming up to address this more directly, I would just note that Mr. Siegel has worked with us for many, many years, and so he's probably quite able to get inside our heads, and I think that does lend to additional responsiveness in the proposal process. Alan, anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's the nut of it, that he's somebody who's been involved in transit and in funding transit, essentially all of the projects that we've done in the region. He's had some involvement in, and is a strong thinker and somebody who pushes us to be smarter about how we do things. And so the group that was doing the review felt that, once again, he had pushed in what he put together us to think smarter about how to approach new starts, small starts, core capacity, the kinds of issues that we need to do to be able to have another successful project like the Orange Line that got the $749 million out of new starts.
It still raises my level of uncomfort further now that he has worked so much with. That may be a possibility or a caution, is that when people do the evaluation, it is not fully being looked at, and maybe there might be some inherent bias because of the longevity of having a company, a person do that. Yeah, that's it. And, yeah, you're perfect. I just got reserves just all around this, and your answer, unfortunately, just dumped some more red flags on top of this whole thing for Siegel to be that person. And then secondly, that none of them say that they can find any DBE participation in anything that that company is doing. If you're going to get a $100,000 contract, maybe you might not have a person who has the expertise, but there is some level of things in service that you need that you certainly ought to be able to find some DBE to do. And when it's just this, and then the statement that we will work along with them to try to do that, I tell you, Mr. General Manager, and I'm a little tired of seeing it every time we get a contract where we can't come up with. That's what we're going to do. Because if I tell you I can't do it, and then you work with me along as I go, my answer basically is going to be to you, I told you from the beginning, I couldn't do it. There was no way. So why you keep bothering me? And I think I'm seeing too many of those, for my comfort level, coming across. And with Siegel, we can go to vote this morning, but just know that my vote is a flat-out no.
Absolutely understand both of the issues you raise. To address both of them very briefly, one, clearly we do not want to get into the habit of thinking that just because we've worked with somebody in the past means that they're the right person to work with in the future. I'd say that this is perhaps a unique situation. I don't expect that to give you any comfort on that, but please know that we talked about that as well in the selection committee to make sure that we're not kind of getting captured into the old thinking, and did consciously think about that as well. And with the DBE approach, all we can do is say, we're going to continue to work with them to see what they can do in the future. It's unfortunately a very, very specialized expertise here, which is why we needed the process in the first place. There were very few people who applied, and just not a lot of opportunities that are obvious. So we're going to have to look at the non-obvious opportunities.
What I'm going to suggest here this morning is we pull that third item, the resolution 1504-15, from the consent agenda, and consider the other three remaining items, which are the resolution. It's a standing resolution that directed ordinance to be read by title only, approval of the board minutes of March 25th, 2015, and resolution 15-0416, which is authorizing a contract with Faithful Plus Gold, Inc. for on-call facility and building assessment services. So I'd like to get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the third item, and then we can decide what we want to do with the third item.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda minus resolution 15-04-15. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. So let's, right now, let's deal with resolution 15-04-15. So I think it's up to the board whether they want to feel comfortable in moving forward and making a motion to approve the resolution as presented, or we'd like to have some additional time to allow staff to talk with Dr. Bethel about some of his concerns. I'm comfortable moving forward with the agenda item today. I happen to know Mr. Siegel and have worked with him for years, and he is probably what you need to do this work. So I'm supportive of that, but I also very much appreciate Dr. Bethel's concerns about that it doesn't look like, when you look at this, that the others were evaluated in the same way. So I think there's some fair issues there. So the question is for the board: does the board want to move forward? And if so, is there a motion then to approve resolution 15-04-15? I'm seeing a reluctance here. Can we?
Well, actually, I mean, I'm from a perspective of being able to approve what we're seeing here. I've got a comfort level to go ahead and make a motion today to approve this. Even if we were to reassess the Siegel situation in both the strategic planning and financial analysis for the possible points, he'd have to be reduced by a significant amount to come even below the 73 or the 76 if we felt like the scoring was potentially on the high side because there's this familiarity with the individual or the firm. So from that perspective, I feel comfortable that there's a significant enough margin that even if there was this bias towards this firm if there was, as we've referenced, I think there's enough margin in there to say that we would probably still be going with this firm or individual, even not knowing this person or firm. The thing that I want to address that Dr. Bethel has so adeptly and eloquently raised is this idea that understanding that this individual has an expertise that's very unique, but as a region and as an organization, we do. As we look forward into the future, one of the challenges that we're going to face, and any organization is going to face, is the lack and the depth of the challenge of the experience in our region. If we're not very focused on encouraging anybody, not just minorities, but women to enter in careers, we've got this STEM and STEAM conversation that goes on. As an organization, we've got an opportunity to encourage things like this and encourage folks and individuals to pursue careers and opportunities to, in a sense, back up and give us more depth in these situations. And if we're not focused on that, as Dr. Bethel was referencing, then I think we're going to continue the cycle that we've always experienced. If we're not focused, if we're not very deliberate about some of these things, then I do think we run into these same challenges, and we don't expand that foundation in the women and minority world of being ever able to compete for these types of contracts in these types of situations. So from where I sit, I would be comfortable making a motion approving this contract with the notations that we've just referenced and the things that we've just highlighted.
I was just hesitating because when I first saw this and read it, I don't know Steven Siegel personally. I might be able to pick him out of a lineup, but I'm really not sure about that. But I do know him by reputation, and he has an excellent reputation. For two of the work elements here, I do know PFM, which was the losing firm. I've hired PFM in my past life several times, and I have the highest regard for them. I was surprised at the difference in the scoring between PFM and Steven Siegel. But, as I thought about it, and knowing Mr. Siegel's reputation, and even with my high regard for the people at PFM, yeah, it's the ultimate result I'm comfortable with. So, the other firms, I don't know those people at all, so.
Dr. Beth, did you have anything more to add? So
Nothing else there.
I think I heard that did you actually offer a motion?
I will so move that we pass Resolution 1504-15.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
I second that. Is there any further discussion? I think what you're hearing before we take a vote is this is a good example of just, we read the materials and I think some of this, you need to understand how it appears to somebody else on the outside. Again, I know Steve, as I said, I think he does wonderful work, and I think he'll be a good consultant for us, but I also cannot say enough about what we heard from both Director Stovall and Dr. Bethel, is that these are important things. I think building a bench is one of the ones we need to do, and we need to start talking to Steve about how to start building that bench and what he can do to maybe help find some people of color or minorities that could come in and actually start doing some of this work and maybe learn from him. So I think it's a golden opportunity for him to think about the future of his firm after he decides to retire. So, I'm sorry, do you have something you wanted to add there?
Other than we will twist his arm.
Okay.
Very well.
Thank you very much. So with that, if there's no further discussion, then I'll call a question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 15-05-15, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Have one.
Nay.
That's right, that's right.
Nay.
Okay, all right. So the motion is approved 3-1. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on then to Resolution 15-04-17, which is endorsing further development of the Powell Division Transit and Development Project, including a letter to FTA seeking entry into FTA's project development under Small Starts program.
Yes, Mr. Board President, members of the board, as Alan cues up here, I just wanted to just give you a notion that this is really still a very early stage of this overall project development phase, but our colleagues at Metro have been leading an effort over the last year to develop and plan a Powell Division Transit corridor. This would be a bus rapid transit corridor as recommended out of the studies, and we mostly have the routes defined, though there are still a few options on the table in certain areas. I would note that one of the things I would like to do is to come to the board at these important junctures. And this is an important juncture because we will be asking the Federal Transit Administration to put this project into the pipeline under project development phase. And if all things line up the right way, that would lead to the development of the project over time. Now, I would just note that what we're asking is really just endorsement of the project at this time so that we do have your confidence as we move forward with that project development letter, if you will, to FTA. But the other thing, we have to be really clear about what it's not. This is not a financial commitment. This is not a total and complete commitment to advance this project. but it is you saying this is the right direction for us to proceed, and the next step is logical at this stage of the game. So with that little bit of background, I wanted Alan to give you a little bit of again, additional background, refinement on the PAL Division Transit Corridor and really where it is in process today.
Great, thank you, Neil. Board members, I'll do a pretty quick update here since Neil gave you the context. This is really about continuing to move forward with a project that has garnered already a lot of support from the public and jurisdictions and stakeholders in the corridor, and a lot of interest and excitement actually about the opportunities that we can to develop a project that provides faster and more reliable trips, provides for more comfortable and safe and always a safe trip, and connect to places that we really care about, key places in the corridor, just a string of pearls really to connect between downtown, obviously, and OHSU, the inner southeast neighborhoods, PCC Southeast, the Jade District, the Green Line Station, Division Midway, and downtown Gresham, Gresham Vista, and Mount Hood Community College, a wonderful connection of different job and educational opportunities, housing, and activity and medical, all strung out in a straight line, which we can actually serve in a way that makes sense. And at the same time, I always want to stress that we are working with the communities to also develop our service enhancement plan that is about the entire network. How does our entire transit system connect in with any single line? Because it's never about just one line. It's about how all the connections work together. The project, the PAL Division project, has done an extensive amount of outreach at a number of different levels. And these are just some of the examples and some photos from them, from youth engagement, talking to local businesses, obviously with communities and working with the staff of the jurisdictions involved. A series of working groups focusing in on transportation or development, especially on equity with the steering committee, really looking at what the issues are along the corridor and thinking about how, yes, a transit project, which can help people's lives, can also be thought about in the context of affordable housing and other needs of the community. There was, in addition to the many face-to-face meetings and opportunities to connect to people where they were, such as at the night market in the Jade District, there was an online comment map tool which received over 1,500 comments. We had a roundtable discussion with developers, talking both about potential for-profit development and affordable housing development. Outreach to the many multicultural businesses along the alignment. And just as an example, a quote from the Division Midway about the real opportunity that the project and transit-oriented development in this area can bring to the community. The example of going through the Jade District and the excitement that this project has brought in that area as well. And then Neil mentioned the alignment, and I just wanted to talk about that for just a moment. The steering committee has brought us through a series of processes looking at the opportunities here, thinking both about potential ridership and also about places to connect, and has narrowed in on an alignment that from downtown takes advantage of the Tillicum Crossing, serves the western portion of Powell Boulevard, and then somewhere between 50th and 82nd transitions over to Division to make sure to connect to the PCC campus, and then serve the eastern portion of Division Street, which is the more populated and greatly mixed-use area with Division Midway, lots of activity, lots of different services, housing, jobs, educational and medical opportunities along there, through into Gresham, and then several possible transitions in Gresham to Stark to be able to serve the Mount Hood Community College as well. So a series of locations that are would be well connected and obviously in context of the entire system. So a little bit more on where we are now, and Neil already gave you the general context. You know, we always have to identify our partners and figure out what kinds of things we're trying to accomplish with a project. We start some conceptual planning and start to talk about alternatives. But at some point with any project where we're going to pursue federal funds, we also need to enter into the FTA's, the Federal Transit Administration's process. And for a small starts project like that, the true formal beginning of that is the entry into project development, which is what we were talking about, seeking your concurrence for writing a letter to request entry into project development. And that allows us then to move forward, do some more finalize kind of the conceptual design and start to move into preliminary engineering, do the finance planning and the environmental work under the National Environmental Policy Act to ensure that we understand the benefits and the potential impacts that might be needed to be mitigated as part of the project. And essentially allows us to pursue future funding from the FTA for the project itself. The plan would be to go ahead and write that letter in the next several months and seek entry into project development. If we have what FTA considers to be a complete application, then within 45 days we're able to start that. It's an important milestone in the early part of a development of a project in the eyes of FTA. It's also an important milestone in that once we enter project development, the project eligible expenses that we spend on a project become matchable to future federal match for the project. So it has some other positive implications in terms of finance as well. And with that, I think I will stop talking and see if there are questions or comments.
From the board? Seems like a fairly straightforward process. I know it's not going to be easy. There's lots of competition, so sounds like a good thing to get our oar in the water as quickly as we can and see how we compete. So I'm ready for motions. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 15-04-17?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second? Any further discussion on the item or the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion then to approve Resolution 15-04-17, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right. Now we're going to move on to the ordinances. I have some information in front of me that I wanted to make sure I started with. So we have two ordinances here today. First is Ordinance 338, which is regarding an honored citizen fare increase. I will turn to TriMet General Counsel Shelley Devine for the first reading of this ordinance.
Thank you,
Devine?
Mr. Board President. Ordinance number 338 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, adopting honored citizen fare increases and amending TriMet Code Chapter 19. This is the first reading.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Devine. So I want, just process-wise, I want to make sure everybody saw the equity analysis for this. It was, I think, sent out to us electronically. We have it in front of us here today. Does the board have any questions or concerns regarding the transit equity analysis before we proceed? Okay, seeing none then, I will move forward and I will open the floor for public comment on this ordinance. I do want to note that written comments already received online or through the mail have been shared with the board, and comments completed today will be forwarded to the board members, will also become part of the permanent record of the formal public hearing. In a moment, I'm going to invite up those who have signed up to speak and come up two at a time. Comments be limited to 3 minutes, please. I think you'll notice up there, when the light turns yellow, you have 30 seconds left to complete your comments. When the light turns red, you're be expected to close your comments as quickly as possible. This is to ensure that we have equal time for everybody and maximizes the number of folks. We don't have a lot today, so we'll probably have some questions of the folks who want to testify too. If you wish to share additional information after the 3 minutes, you can include them in the comments cards. And so public comments will be taken now, and I'm going to go back to the list of the folks who signed up. And I have, first off, make sure I got the right one here. I have Joanne Harrigal, I know she's here, I saw her here, and Jared Franz from Opal. If I could have you both come up. Joanne, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Please proceed.
Board President Warner and members of the board, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Joanne Harrigal. I'm with the Civic Involvement Coordinator for Elders in Action. And as you probably know, Elders in Action is a nonprofit organization that advocates for and provides meaningful community engagement for older adults. Our agency also works with low-income older adults and people with disabilities on a regular basis, and we understand at a very basic level, as I'm sure you do, how even the smallest increase in living costs can upset the equilibrium of a person's life and put them in jeopardy of homelessness or other peril. Barbara Bernstein, our interim executive director, has spoken with you previously, and regarding the proposed 25-cent increase in the honored citizen fare, and she's noted already our concern that the most vulnerable portion of the older adult population will be the hardest hit by the increase. I'm also I have the comments that you received at your open house, and it's reiterated by many people there. To mitigate the impact, it's our understanding from the information that you have here today as well as online that TriMet proposes to increase the funding allocated to access transit and emergency relief programs. We strongly urge you to maximize these allocations to minimize the impact on honored citizen increase that you're proposing, and we hope that the allocations to these organizations like Ride Connection and others will incorporate the costs of implementing those programs, as well as actually sort of integrating the actual relief to the citizens that have to pay the fare. It's also understanding that TriMet proposes to do increased and targeted outreach to the community to raise awareness of the Access Transit programs, and Elders in Action welcomes the opportunity to work with you on this particular effort to make sure that people that are impacted, and there will be a lot of people that are impacted, understand how to access the discounts or get other assistance where it's necessary. We also stand ready to work with TriMet on the electronic fare system that you're talking about. I think that it's really important that this program is age-friendly and is easily accessible to people with disabilities. I know there's a lot of concern out there, and to the extent that we can help sort of mitigate that or sort of go to that population and talk to them about how best to access this new program, we would love to help. So we commend TriMet for the roundtables and the public outreach meetings that you and your staff have held, and we're hopeful that the efforts will translate into a better understanding of the fare increase if it is actually approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. I'll point out, you did provide us a written material here. We didn't have copies made, but I'll make sure the board has this.
Actually, I brought extra copies,
Yeah.
and I think you'll have them.
That's right. It'll be reproduced and be part of the public
Great.
record. I will point out, we did get all of the comments, pages and pages
Yeah.
of the comments from folks, and thank you for your effort and help there on that. So I'll pass this around right now. Thank you. Jared?
Thank you, Chair Warner, members of the board. My name is Jared Franz. I'm the Policy Director at Opal Environmental Justice Oregon. And I'm going to try to keep my comments really brief today. You've already heard from riders and people who are most impacted by the honored citizen fare increase. This morning you'll hear from some more after I speak, and I'll let them speak about their experience. But I'm here to present a letter on behalf of a number of concerned organizations and individuals about this increase. The letter includes representatives of the disability rights community, the homeless community, public health advocates, public health advocates, and as well as communities of color, including NEA, CIO, APANO, and others. Basically, what this letter says is that there is no financial or operational need for TriMet to raise this fare. Let's just look at the math really quickly. TriMet says $650,000 will be raised approximately by this increase. That's about 0.1% of TriMet's operating budget. And in fact, it is such a small amount of money that if TriMet did absolutely everything else in its budget, everything, and maybe increased spending on a few things, they would still have enough money left over in their ending fund balance to be well above agency need and board policy. In fact, TriMet's approximate monthly cost of operating is about $42 million. Board policy on the subject is that the ending fund balance should be about 2.5 times that. But reducing the $650,000 that this fare increase would raise would still leave TriMet with an ending fund balance of over $132 million, or $27 million more than board policy on the issue. We recognize that expanding the Access Transit program is important. We want to see regional service levels increased, but the way to do that is not by raising fares on the lowest income people. TriMet's own analysis shows that 63% of the people who use the Honored Citizen Fare are considered low income. Of course, members of the board know that TriMet has a very low definition of what a low-income person constitutes. In fact, it's $7,000 a year less than even Section 8 eligibility. So the very real impact of this fare increase is more than is even discussed in the papers before you. And I'll allow the people who are going to be directly impacted by this increase to say more about it, but the point is very clear. TriMet has no financial or operational need for this increase at this time and should table a decision on this fare increase pending more understanding of its mitigation options and the impacts of the coming e-fare system to avoid a 1-2 punch to low-income riders. Thanks.
Thank you, Jared. Any questions? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your coming in today. And again, just remind folks, we're not going to be taking action on the ordinance today. At our next business meeting, we could if we wish to. So the next two are Teresa Keshi Soto and Kim Marks.
I was trying to be a gentleman. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name's Kim Marks. I live on 130th Avenue, just off of Powell Boulevard in outer southeast Portland. Earlier today, someone referred to this as a controversial issue. And I think that kind of undersells the impact of this, this issue. So I want to bring it down to earth, and we're going to have a little interaction here, if maybe. How many of you all have ever scraped underneath the couch cushions or through the drawers in your kitchen to find the money to get a bus pass? Could you raise your hand? I'm legally blind, but I see none. I have oh, sorry, over there, one? Okay, I have literally done that more than one time. And if I come up short, say a nickel, a dime, that has the impact of meaning I either get on that bus or max, or in the case of a bus, maybe I get a bus rider or driver who's going to be lenient and let me and float me a dime or a nickel and give me a ticket. If it's a max and I have to make a decision on those horns of dilemma, if I have to be somewhere and getting on that max and facing getting caught by a fare inspector and being then 86th from the max because I didn't have the ticket, that's a decision you're going to put people in for this amount of money. What's the ticket or what's the fine for being on the max without a ticket, especially if it's been your second time? It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for out of your pockets, but out of someone who's living on the margins, it's a ton of money. And if they get 86th, that means that they don't get to go to the doctors. They have a problem getting to the courthouse, in which case they have warrants out for them. They lose their eligibility for possibly for Medicaid, food stamps, or other private social service programs. That's the reality that you're putting people's lives into. That's the difference between stability and chaos. for people's individual lives. For that amount of money, I could lose my house if I don't make the right appointment. That's what you guys got to really start thinking about when you do these things. Because you all look pretty well heeled and don't have to make that decision. If I lose my benefits, I'm not just looking less than well heeled, I'm living on the streets. That's the real world impact, and that is not a controversy. That's life or death.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Teresa?
Hello, it's been a long time since I've seen you. You know, I'm Teresa Keishi Soto, and I'm here this morning to ask that you not approve TriMet's proposal to raise the price of the honored citizens tickets and monthly passes. TriMet isn't in any financial problem. There is no need to burden a population that is dealing with rising utility bills, food prices, and rent while living on a fixed income. 70% of honored citizens are low income. I believe that all of you on the TriMet board realize how important it is for you to get around and take care of your needs. You may agree with me that the ability to do for yourself, your independence, becomes more precious as we age. For honored citizens who depend on transit, mobility is important and essential for their mental and physical health. Please consider that your decision next month will have a direct impact on many honored citizens' mobility. I ask that you think outside the corporate box and that you show compassion, very non-corporate, and respect for a population that will someday include all of you and may already include some of you. Perhaps to you, a quarter and $2 are not significant amounts. To those who have to count every penny, like the 70% of honored citizens who live in poverty, these amounts are significant. It is wonderful, and I say this sincerely, that the fares for honored citizens have remained the same for 5 years. We give thanks, and personally, I see this as a very positive thing that TriMet has done. TriMet can be an example to other transit agencies by keeping the fare the same, by showing that you care. We give thanks because we're all connected, that none of you on the board will ever have to get in line for a free meal, that none of you on the board will never have to consider getting your teeth pulled because you can't afford dental care, that none of you on the board will ever have to look for an agency that will give you toilet paper. We give thanks. These are the situations that honored citizens experience. Please don't judge harshly those who have entered their golden years without the necessary finances to sustain them. Keep the honored citizens' fares the same, and please don't throw honored citizens under the bus. In closing, I want to say what I have always said, perhaps you remember. TriMet, you can be the very best. Let's get people out of cars and into public transit. Let's better our air quality, and let's get rid of some of that traffic congestion. Muchísimas gracias. It's good to see all of you again. Gracias.
Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate it. All right, I have one more signed up at this time. Lou Church from PSU.
I have 3 quick questions, 3 comments. I'll try to go fast to stay under the 3-minute warning. My name's Lou, L-E-W, from Progressive Student Union at Portland State and Transit Writers Union. I think before the current board members were on the board, we gave 1,400 signatures on the desk in front to the last TriMet board against cutting Fairless Square, and that unelected board voted 6-1 to cut it. If you pass this particular fare hike for what you're so far calling honored citizens, you may want to redesign the designation on the passes and put DC instead of HC, dishonored citizens. The quick questions are, It looked like the CAT committee supported the fare hike, but a couple of the CAT committee members told me that they get free bus passes on that committee. Is that true or not? We can ask Bruce about this later, or Neil. The first question, one of the people that spoke against the ordinance this morning, when I got to talk to her briefly, was they're all men. And she's talking about the board of directors. Has there ever been a woman general manager or a minority general manager? Has there ever been a chair of the board who's a woman or minority? And I also noticed and appreciated Dr. Bethel's questions about the transit police addition and funding for that. It sounds like this proposed fare hike will create $600,000. Is that approximately the cost of the 5 new transit police? So you don't have to answer those now. Those are 3 quick questions. How am I doing on time? 30 seconds? A minute 30. Okay. I appreciate Dr. Bethel today asking questions. I appreciated seeing him at the SEI event on Saturday with people from Policy Link in Oakland who talked, Sarita in particular, talked about lawsuits in Minneapolis against light rail that were successful, similar to Bus Riders Union in Los Angeles, initiating lawsuits against light rail. I know that's your bailiwick. I also appreciate Dr. Bethel talking with Teresa and Joanne at the ONI conference at a workshop about holding police accountable. I think that's very helpful. We would like to see more accountability from TriMet. Time? 46 seconds. Okay. Vote no on this fare increase. Vote no on the fare increase. And that's nay when you get to vote, not A. We're working in a coalition as well against the fare increase, but also to reduce the honored citizen age from 65 to 60. The current level is inconsistent with nonprofits like Northwest Pilot Project, and their age cutoff is 55, so security is 62, so that's a 2-point proposal. Time? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, and we will get you some answers to the questions, and maybe General Manager can either respond to you or have somebody respond on your behalf, okay? All right, thank you very much. So that's all I have signed up for the ordinance today. Is there anybody else in the audience who did not sign up in advance to comment who would like to do so this morning? Okay, it's seeing none, then the public hearing on ordinance 338 is now closed. I guess I would see if, Mr. General Manager, based on what you've heard today, you have any further comments or information for us?
Research some of the topics that were brought up, but I would just note that these are never easy topics to bring forward. But again, our focus is really on high-quality service, and we have been restoring service, and we have been improving service, and we're going to continue to do that. And I think it is kind of the situation where we ask everyone to pay a fair share. And I would just note that the fare is still deeply discounted. It's still half of the adult fare, $125, at the recommended level that has come before you. And I think that it also notes that comports with the FTA standard related to the ADA criteria. Regarding the mitigation program, and you've heard particularly from your the testimony from Elders in Action that was particularly important, and I would just note that there are really 2 areas where we want to engage in a much more robust mitigation program related to this program. And actually, I think this is needed whether or not there's a fare increase. But one is to increase the discount on honored citizen fares. Right now, we offer a 5% discount. We want to increase that to 20%, which is similar to what we offer in other discounted fare programs with working with nonprofits. And then also to expand that grant program so that the grant program becomes available to groups that are really focused on serving our honored citizen population. And we'll look forward to working with our colleagues at Ride Connection, who have really been our right hand in all of this work, to continue that work in any case, but certainly if the ordinance is approved. And I would just note that regarding the equity analysis, and this is a question that Board Member Esmond, who's in Washington DC today, so I often ask is, was the equity analysis reviewed by the federal agency? Well, we did submit it to the Federal Transit Administration, and as we normally would expect, there were no comments. Again, generally, their review is an after-action review to make sure that you have the information you need in front of you at the time you make the decision. So just to note that that step had been taken as well. And I just would also note, and I think Board President Warner noted that you do have in front of you the results from our citizen and outreach efforts over the last month. A number of meetings. I want to thank Martin Gonzalez in particular for the efforts of really reaching out in a very broad way to a number of groups. And so that information is in front of you too. And with that, I'd be happy to answer or volley to the appropriate staff any questions that you might have.
Comments, questions, Board? I think we will probably have a very robust discussion when this is up for consideration as second reading a month from now about. I guess I want to make clear from at least from my perspective that this board very much has compassion and respects the needs and desires of folks who are elderly, disabled, and have modest incomes. I think people may mistakenly think that everybody up here didn't have to deal with struggling financially at other times in our life, and I know the backgrounds of some of the folks, so I know that they understand the needs and issues that many people are struggling with. So we will take that into consideration as we move forward on this ordinance, one way or the other. But I would encourage you to attend the meeting next month, because I believe the board, as I said, will want to discuss this in some detail. It's something that we do not take lightly, and it's important that everybody understand where we are and some of the things, frankly, that I think the organization needs to do to address the needs of the low-income folks. And we need to learn from other areas of the country to become smarter and better. But I'm sure that I don't believe the fare increase is whether we go forward with it or not, is an answer to that issue. I think it's a longer term and a bigger issue that we've got to grapple with here as a region and as TriMet. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. Your comments are appreciated. And I'm going to conclude the discussion then on Ordinance 338 and move on to our second ordinance, which is 339. So once again, I'm going to ask our General Counsel to conduct the first reading of Ordinance 339.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Ordinance number 339 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, adopting service changes, updating route designations, and amending TriMet Code Chapter 22, and repealing TriMet Code Chapter 20, charter rates. This is the first reading.
Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate it. Mr. John Manager, any comments from your perspective before we move forward?
Just very briefly, Mr. Board President, members of the board, we do have some major service changes that are proposed in the budget for next year, and I know that you've been briefed on them, particularly in the past, actually at a couple different iterations we came to you, and you know that this has been a very thorough process of community outreach and conversation associated with particularly the planning for the service around the Milwaukee Light Rail, or the Orange Line as we now know it. This service will take place upon your approval on September 20th. One of the things I always want to emphasize about this is the dramatic increase in bus service that will be accompanying the opening of the Orange Line. In particular, there'll be doubling of bus trips on lines 28, 31, 34, and the 99. There'll be more neighborhood service in Milwaukee and Oregon City, and new connections throughout southeast Portland and Clackamas County. And I wanted to just make that point because oftentimes people think that it's light rail or bus, and it is truly both that create a great network and a great system that really serves people well. And I think that while we weren't able to do everything everybody asked us to do with bus service in the Orange Line corridor, we've done an awful lot in terms of actually ramping up service to support that community and that line dramatically. And I would also just note that that isn't just about the commute from Clackamas County or southeast Portland to Portland. Those services are also very important for local links and local connections, which right now are are hard, given the frequency of service, and will become much, much easier with this new note, new service. Finally, I would just note that the equity analysis was also presented to you at your March meeting. You have the final version of that in front of you also. And again, as I noted with the Honor Citizen Fair, we have also submitted this to FTA and have not received any comments. But with that, I'll simply pause because I know that you've been well briefed on particularly the orange line changes a couple times in the past. Don't want to belittle that, but I think it's a great investment in our great community, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Is there any questions on kind of the technical details of the changes themselves? Okay, I see none. And again, I remind the board, we do have the equity study for these changes. Does the board have any questions or concerns regarding the equity analysis for this ordinance and these changes? Okay. So if the board's comfortable then with the conclusions of the equity analysis, we're going to move forward, and I will open the public hearing now on ordinance 339. As I stated before, anything we've received in a written nature has been provided to us ahead of time. I don't remember seeing much on this particular item, and right now I have nobody signed up who wants to testify specifically on this ordinance. But, and if there is, I'm going to limit them to 3 minutes. So I guess what I want to do is ask if there's anyone in the audience who did not sign up previously to testify on this ordinance, or who wants to make testimony on this ordinance here today. I see none, therefore I'm going to close the public hearing. All right. And at our May 27th meeting, we will have the second reading of this ordinance and also potential action on the item. So that actually concludes all that we have on our business meeting agenda. Is there anything else the board or staff knows that should be brought forward for our consideration here this morning? I see none, therefore I'm going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.